And there she is. Hey, Kayla, how are you doing?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm a little nervous.
Don't
I
be
mean,
nervous.
well, you're in charge. This is like a
Well,
different space today, right?
yeah, but we do that dance really well. We complement each other anytime there's something new going on.
We actually do, and that's one of the things that I just love working with you, Kayla, is because we cross several bridges, right? Like we cross the bridge of, I'm more of a Gen X baby boomer, you're more of a millennial, which, is a really cool bridge that we notice a lot. And also, you're like the age of my kids, I'm like the age of your mom, so
Yeah.
that's kind of a different thing too. And
Yeah.
yet at the same time, we're also like partners, like we're looking at business, we're looking at technology, we're looking at where people are, in their business. And that's pretty cool too, from different perspectives.
I also think we're kind of like two kids getting to play in something we love so much because it just lights us up to have these conversations. So it almost feels like, I can imagine my favorite place to play and just be creative as a kid. And it's what coming to work feels like.
Yeah, and I think that what's cool about that is that, and maybe this is why it works so well, you and I working together, is that's a non-negotiable for us, for
Yeah,
both of us.
for
We're
sure.
both like, if it's not fun, we're not doing it.
Not doing that.
We need to rethink it.
Yeah. Well, today I was hoping I could actually ask you some questions because I noticed that we have all this amazing content of all these amazing $1 million light workers that come on, and you're not getting to shine and share your brilliance with us. So if it's okay, I've prepared a few questions to ask you today.
I love that, I think. And it makes me a little nervous, but what the heck? Let's do it.
Not be afraid, but do it anyway.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Okay. So we're going to start all the way back in the beginning. No, I'm kidding. Um, so I'm going to read off of some questions that I have. Um, was there a season where your life looked successful on the outside, but internally you knew something was out of alignment?
Yes.
Tell me more.
Yes. I mean, that for me is when I went down the path of spirituality, because I was, I had reached my goal salary. I was making really, really good money. I had my, little dream house pretty much on the beach in Southern California. My kids were at a really good place. One of them had already gone off to college, and the other one was just about ready to go to college. And both of them had gotten into the schools that they had always dreamed of going to, which as a parent, when you have kids that dream of only one school choice, you kind of worry, well, what happens if they don't get in? So the fact that they got in was good. It looked like everything was perfect from the curb, and this is for my husband who will laugh. But, even my car matched the house, like everything from a Virgo perspective was like looking good. And yet I was the most miserable that I'd ever been in my life, and pretty good about, holding space for everything to look like it was good. But I felt like a hamster on a treadmill, and I was not enjoying any of the outcomes. I was just working all of the time. I was working in a corporate job that, it was a good job. Like there was nothing wrong with the job. It's just that the clients that I was working with were not necessarily clients that I was feeling like were in integrity. And it just was not a place of passion for me at all. And I know it's interesting because I've always been in business. I've always been in marketing. And I was in graphic design for a long time. That was my undergraduate degree. But I was never passionate about those things. And I think this is a really important point for people, is that at that point in my life, it was more like I needed to be passionate about what I was putting out into the world. So in other words, I needed to be more passionate about the programs that we were selling, the products that we were selling, the businesses that we were selling, than the actual work that we were doing, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so from like everybody's perspective around me, things looked really great. But Kayla, I was working like literally like 60 to 80 hours a week. You know, my phone was my leash. Like even if I wasn't working, people were calling me and texting me, and I literally had a nervous breakdown. It's so funny because my mom, and this is actually in our sitcom of Two Girls in a Galaxy, but my mom called me and she just said, "How's it going?" And I started to cry. You know, I literally sat down on the curb and I started to cry. And I think that was the first time that I realized something was wrong, because I would not allow myself to feel my feelings. You know, I would not allow myself to believe that anything was wrong. And my marriage was like not, it was kind of at the same place of the business that I was working. You know, I didn't feel really great about it, but I was trying to maintain that, you know, that look of everything is fine, you know, everything is good, you know, but you can't do that after a while. You know, it is just going to eventually, I think it'll either come out through disease or it's going to come out through an emotional breakdown. And for me, it was an emotional breakdown.
Yeah. And that does not match the car or the house.
No, it did not.
So
It did not at all.
I think that's really interesting because as a millennial, I watched so many people that I care deeply about have that turning point and realize this is not fun anymore. And like you say all the time, I just want to have fun. And so I think that's something I've really focused on when I hit, corporate career in corporate America. I was like, oh, this is what I'm supposed to be doing. But I think this is why people have those breakdown things. So it's really interesting to see that you went through that and you made such a pivotal shift. And that was what caused your spiritual awakening almost.
Yeah. Well, I think that, you know, one of the main differences I often see between on a work level between, you know, baby boomers, Gen X, I'm like right on the cusp, so I identify with both, and millennials and Gen Z, is that in our generation, we were taught to just buck it up, you know, tough it out, like suck it up, you know, like, I mean, literally, Kayla, we bragged about only getting 4 hours of sleep per night, you know, and I think that you guys watched us all and then, you know, for 20 years, get to a point where maybe we were drinking a lot, or maybe we were, you know, overeating or over exercising, but we were compensating for it in other ways. That one of the things I really admire about younger people, and actually baby boomers and Gen Xers make fun of this, is that millennials draw a line. And I respect that, you know, is that, and like I had never heard the term corporate trauma until I started working with millennials, and they're all like, oh no, this is giving me PTSD. My corporate trauma is coming up, you know, and that became something that we really tried to pay attention to with Solopreneur Productions, is that people aren't going through that same thing that they may have experienced in other places.
Yeah. Well, you lead a business that gives space to pay attention to that. And I think that everybody on our team really wants to protect their role in the business because of how you lead. And I think almost that's what everybody says they want when they're running a company, but it's not what they show through their actions. So I think, you know, first of all, it's amazing to get to experience that in action, working beside of you and kind of giving you the pulse of the company and watching how you react to it, and then seeing how the team feels when the approach is just take a moment and pause and look at the 4 agreements. What's out of alignment? And they're like, what is this? A counseling session? So no, I know we all really appreciate that. So I think that goes right into the next question really well is when did you realize that business itself could be a spiritual practice?
That is such a great question. And I think that whether you realize it or not, your business is a spiritual practice. Solopreneur Productions had grown very quickly. It was COVID. We had to put together a team. We put it together very, very quickly. And, it wasn't perfect. It wasn't perfect. And the next steps for me, because, we did have this big cruise ship that was cruising down the ocean, but, as a metaphor for the business, but yet there were a lot of holes, and as the CEO, you're looking at all the holes. People are making them very apparent. And something else that I learned is when you get a business up and running, as we call it in the Million Dollar Lightworker, building the plane as you're flying it. And that is true. Like, you have to build the plane as you're flying it. You have to build your business. You don't wait for it to be perfect. If you wait for it to be perfect, it's never going to be perfect. And as we know in the spiritual world, it's all perfect, right? So it's sort of, there's a lot of contrast in business as a spiritual practice when you know it, because you are looking at things like, it was really important to me that our team did not have that PTSD that I was so used to. In my generation, like I said, you sucked it up, you worked 12 hours, you didn't question, you just kept going. And then, all of a sudden I started realizing, well, what the heck? That didn't work for me. Why would I expect it of other people? And that's when I took a look at how other very successful businesses operated, because that's who I am. I do tend to look for models. And I found some really fascinating models. But the main thing was when I looked at our company values and I thought, these are a bunch of fluffy words. Like, they sounded really good and they looked good on paper, and, they may have meant something to future and prospective clients. But the truth was they didn't mean anything to our team. A word here might mean something to one person and a word there might mean something to another person. But I think for me, business as a spiritual practice started when we decided that our company values were the 4 agreements. Because that meant that anybody who agreed to be a part of our team when we hire them also agreed to the 4 agreements. And it's kind of a no-brainer. I wish all companies would operate this way. And it's awesome when I'm talking to other leaders and CEOs, because when I tell them, or just people who are spiritual, when I tell them that our values are the 4 agreements, they're like, wow, that's so cool. But it's also, Kayla, it's so easy. Too, like when things come up, and they do, we can just point to, well, where do you take responsibility for this? And I think that business becomes a spiritual practice when you can have a team of people that all choose to look at it that way. And that happens when you set the values down in such a way like we did that it's pretty clear.
Yeah. So I believe that the team, like the culture of the team, became a spiritual practice at that moment. Can you tell me, though, for you, when you think about your spirituality as a person and your business as a person, when did it like click to you? Okay, good example, I think, is when you said, I don't want to date. I just want to have fun. And then you met Carl. So when was that moment, or can you think of a time when it just clicked to you that my business can integrate into my life as a part of my divine flow and my spiritual practice and not be this force, push and pull? Like, and maybe there's not a specific moment. Maybe it is just realizing that the values needed to be a page in Notion that people visited more. Um, I feel like there was a moment, and maybe it was that let 'em moment, and we don't have to go into too much detail, but where you realize the flow of it all was business as a spiritual practice.
Yeah, I mean, I think there were several moments, I think that they kind of built upon each other because, and I tell the story when Solopreneur Productions first took off, I hired a lot of friends. Actually, I hired clients, basically, people that attended our spiritual events. And what I realized was that you had to be, first of all, very clear about job roles. You can't just plug people into positions, but they have to be clear on what they're doing and what's expected before you hire them. And unfortunately or fortunately, during that period, in order to be able to grow as quickly as we were, we had to put a lot of systems in place. And when we started to put those systems in place, I noticed that people became very insecure. Well, as you know, in fact, and I'm going to go on record as saying this, but, one person even said she was going to take the whole team with her and leave, and I had to really look in the mirror at myself and say, what created this? Because for me, spirituality is about taking 100% responsibility for yourself. I mean, we tend to think about spiritual experiences being out there, right? Like all of these things that are happening out there. And one thing that I've learned on my own spiritual path is that for me, that is not true at all. Spirituality is, I like to say, inner-sizing. It's about working the inside. It's about looking within. It's about like really owning your crap. It's about figuring out what your blocks are. And when that happened to me as a leader on the team, I wasn't looking at those people to blame them as much as I was looking at me saying, okay, where are my blocks? And what do I need to learn? Because I know that it trickles down. And obviously there was something happening for me that was creating that situation. And that's interesting too, because that's about the time that you started working with me. That's about the time that I met the love of my life. And I bring this up because that is how quick it happens, is once you quit blaming, and as Adironda, one of our clients, always says that when you have, when you're pointing your finger at everybody else, you have 4 fingers coming back at you. And I think that, you have to take that very seriously. And that's how simple spirituality is for me, Kayla. It's like the minute something comes up, I just ask myself, okay, is this love or fear? And if it's fear, well, where is it coming from? What's the block? And then from there, you can inner size that block until it sort of fades away, which is usually what happens. And then the next thing you know, if you're surrounded with people of like mind, like I believe you are, I believe our team is, I believe Carl is, then they will actually point out to you down the road that you released that block. Why? Because you're not creating it anymore. It's not a part of your life.
Right. I remember watching that transformation happen, and without going into anything specific, I started as a freelancer and met you, and I was like, wow, yeah, like we just clicked on so many things. And then I realized for whatever reason, the divine flow wasn't keeping us together at that moment. And then later we had a conversation, and I watched from that moment forward, you consistently choose to analyze like the mirror of it all. Like, what is this showing me? What do I need to learn? And there were even times when I said, you're doing everything right. And you're like, no, there's something I'm supposed to learn here. And I would say, well, you know what? I've got your back. Just tell me what you need. And watching you go through that, I think you're right. I think that was when you just decided, okay, this business, like you spend a third of your life or more, probably every waking moment, thinking about this business that you get to build, and you get to uplift billions through the work that you and your clients and your team do. And I think you went against the four agreements. You took it personally and you said, what am I supposed to learn and steward here? And we all benefited from it. So I think that is the moment that you decided business is a spiritual practice, and you just began living it. And now all of the people that you meet, all the experiences you're having, the team is having, is just a direct reflection of that. All the people that are coming in who are eager to be a part of everything we're creating, it's just really exciting to watch it. Just like it feels like light is beaming now. And you did that. So, I mean, pat yourself on the back.
Well, thank you, Kayla. And
Take the moments to celebrate too, because that's something that I don't think either one of us do very well, is slow down enough to celebrate. Instead, we're like, okay, what's the next thing?
well, and I think also something that, you've really incorporated, and I think other business owners, I hope can really hear this, is about flow. If your business is truly a spiritual practice, and all of a sudden, you are caught up in a levee, or you're swirling around a rock, and you can't seem to get back down the river. I really believe that, I call those speed bumps. It gives you an opportunity to slow down and look around, because and I know you do too, I really believe the universe has my back. I truly believe it. And so when we get slowed down, or when we come up against resistance, it's really, a lot of people look at that as bad. Or when you come up with like an opportunity to pivot, a lot of people will look at that bad. And I don't know if it's just because I moved around so much as a child, but I actually embrace change. When I see change pop up really quick, I go, oh, something really cool is on the other side. And again, I think that all of these things are what makes business a spiritual practice. I think another thing is, I know a lot of people out there think that I'm all about the money. In fact, my program is called Million Dollar Lightworker. But one of the things I've noticed with spiritual businesses is they have a lot of challenges around money. And you cannot have a successful business of any kind if you have issues with money. It's only going to go so far. And so the first thing that you really get the opportunity to tackle in a business is issues with money, because otherwise you have a hobby. It's not a business. You're always going to be up against like what to charge, and how to pay your bills and how to create that flow. And so it's not that I'm all about the money. It's that I am all about impact in the spiritual world. Like I see so many beautiful businesses and business owners in the spiritual world that their messages genuinely need to be out on the planet right now. I mean, and that's why we're all about uplifting billions, and it takes all of those businesses to help us do that. But first, you got to get over your money blocks. And I know you and I have both seen it in surprising ways, where people just refuse to deal with it, and then we watch them just get caught in that levee. They're just swirling around and around and around. And what is it you say? Leap, don't loop.
Right. Yeah. You get to choose. Are you going to keep looping around the same thing, or are you going to leap? And what you said earlier was that you embrace change. But one of my mantras for this year is what you're not changing, you're choosing. And that's something that I see you do really beautifully. You're not just embracing change that happens to you. You are choosing to change the things that are not okay, that cause that force. And there are some people that get caught in the loop of not being able to choose differently. When you make that choice, you are causing a change. So you not only embrace change as it happens around you, but I think one of the things we align on really well is being called a disruptor is not an offensive thing to me. It's actually a compliment, because if I'm not kind of rubbing on something that has been stagnant for so long and not working, what am I doing?
Right.
And I think that's spiritual too, being able to see what other people are doing that keeps them in that loop, and like showing them, hey, are you going to choose to take the next step? And that's part of why I remember when we were thinking about the title of the podcast and the program, there were a lot of options, but the one that kind of made people like, was the $1 million one. And that's why it was like a no-brainer for you. And I was like, yes, it has to be that, because if you're going to really succeed, you have to, like we said before, keep the light on at the lighthouse. And the term, $1 million is not about greed. It's about, look at all this impact we can have. And so just the fact that you chose the words $1 Million Lightworker, they're almost like a juxtaposition, right? Some people think the two can't exist beside of each other, but you're proving that they do. And everybody that you've had on your podcast and all the people coming through the program are just beautiful examples of that. And they're a reflection of you, I think, in some ways. The people that you're bringing in this $1 million framework are choosing to lead the way, knowing they have to make changes and be a part of the change. And I think 5 years ago, every light worker that I knew was in that light spiral of let's keep everything the same. But that's not what we do here.
No.
No, I love that. And that actually, the next question is, what makes someone a $1 million light worker?
For me, what makes someone a $1 million light worker is the understanding that, first of all, it takes money to make money. And it takes money to have an impact. I mean, if you want to, we talk to lots of light workers and they want to be out there on stage. They want to travel the world. They want to have retreats. They want to, do all these things. Well, guess what? Those things require deposits. Those things require, airfare. They require money before you make money. And unless you go, the way I see it, Kayla, is there's two ways to do this. One is you can go out and find someone who is a benefactor, is that what they call them? Somebody who has millions of dollars and is willing to fund you so you can do the work that you want to do to get your message out and have that great impact on the world. But you still have to come up with money. So you can either figure out a way to make the money so it supports you, which is my favorite way because I love strategy, or you can go out and find someone who's extremely wealthy that's just going to give you $1 million so you can go out and get your message. I mean, either way would work. I just happen to focus on Million Dollar Lightworker because I believe that it's funny to me because for me to go out and ask someone for $1 million, and maybe this is my baby boomer / Gen X background, feels like a big ask. You know what I mean? Like, hey, could you fund me $1 million so that I can get out in the world and get my message out? That to me feels like a big ask, and maybe it's a block for me. But being able to go and generate money by the people that are actually supporting your work because you're making a difference in their life feels natural, And the $1 Million Lightworker is someone who clearly understands that it takes money, but also, once we talk strategy, clearly understands that there's always going to be 5% of your market that loves what you're doing, is very supportive, and you can help them solve really big problems by basically spending more time with them. The more time they get one-on-one with you, the more expensive it is. And those programs, when done correctly, can actually fund your business. So, when you think about it, it's kind of like getting a benefactor. Or being a benefactor, I guess is what I should say. It's kind of like being that, except that instead of just asking for money, you're providing them with a service that truly solves some problems that they want to have solved. And to me, how much more ethical can it get? I mean, that is in such integrity, right? It is such a reciprocal, exchange of energy.
That's really good. So I know that we've been on for a while and you and I can literally talk for hours. We've done it before because it's fun. I want to know our mission when we say uplifting billions. What does that truly mean to you? And how are you doing that through Enlighten and the Solopreneur Network?
Great question, Kayla. Thank you for asking that. I can literally get emotional when I think of our mission. That's how passionate I am about it. Uplifting billions, yeah, that's a big number. That's like what, 1/7 of the world population. It is a really big goal, but I believe in big goals. I'm a marathon runner. 1 in a million people run marathons. I believe that, the bigger your goal is, the closer you're going to get to it. I think most people function through life in a different way. They keep their goals small, and they keep themselves small, and that's fine. But for me, I really want to have an impact. And so uplifting billions is, I believe that to change the world and to create a planet full of love begins within. Like we're looking to all of our leaders, politically, artists, visionaries, all these other people. But the truth is, Kayla, it happens within each one of us individually. And so if we can get people into a place where they actually feel that, I mean, it is a very clear statement, uplifting. It's that feeling of love. It's that feeling of happiness that we can internalize. And when we start to do that, it ripples out and it starts to impact the people around us. Now, not that they ask for it, not that we're looking towards them. It's just the way flow happens, right? It's just how it works. Like, we're all one. And if we believe that by taking a look at ourselves and becoming the best version of ourselves possible, and then that ripples out and it starts to touch the people around us, we actually change the planet. I mean, those are the $1 Million Lightworkers. We actually can create this beautiful place, and I don't think it has to be 50% of the planet. I think it can be in the first billions, I mean, I think it can be, I think it can be in those first numbers. But if we can teach the world that each one of us has such a great impact by giving them content through Enlighten, by connecting more light workers together through the Solopreneur Network, it's this ecosystem that just kind of grows more and more $1 Million Lightworkers who have the same, passion about wanting to change the world simply through love. And it's just something that, like, I love talking to people about it. I love, like, the look on their face when I'm out networking and I say, yeah, our mission is to uplift billions. It's like their jaw drops. I want to be a part of that, I want to be a part of that movement. Even if they don't consider themselves a light worker, or they don't even know what that means, right? But uplifting billions, there's a feeling in that statement. And so how are we doing that through Enlighten and the Solopreneur Network? Well, Enlighten that's the goal of all of the local experiences that we create and broadcast out. That's the goal of all of the recordings that we put on Enlighten TV. And the other goal is to be able to, for those people who can't be at live experiences and they're watching all over the world on Enlighten TV, they can still come into the community that we're building locally. So I think that's pretty cool. Because, yeah, we do need to get out and, connect with one another, but we can't always do that, right? Sometimes we're taking care of our parents. Sometimes we're taking care of children. Sometimes we're working jobs, but the idea that we can bring the world in to these experiences and have our community that we're creating here connect with them, that's uplifting billions right there, right? And that takes a lot of light workers to do that. And the Solopreneur Network is supporting those people that want to be a part of that movement, and that's exciting.
Yeah. And I just so happen to work for someone who has a course called Mission Possible. So if your mission is uplifting billions, I believe you're gonna make it happen. And I'm really thankful to get to be a part of that. I think another, really amazing thing about Enlighten is we hear a lot from our customers and other light workers that they feel lonely because it's sometimes hard to go out into your community and say, I'm a light worker. People don't know, they don't even know what that word means, like you said. And so um, if we have a platform where people can come together and meet other like-minded people and learn about events in their own area and different ways that they can connect, it's like, and also, we don't have crazy algorithms that lead you to doom scrolling. It's all about the light, and it's all about feeding the flow, and I don't think there's anything else out there like it right now. And I'm really excited that we get to build this place for people to feel like they can come and be a part of the movement to uplift billions just by being there.
Absolutely.
And just by, you know, commenting on other people's posts and sharing what they're grateful for every day. So I'm really excited that we get to build this. And you're right, the When I tell people our company's values are the 4 agreements and our mission is to uplift billions, they're like, wow.
That's a business? Are you
Yeah.
sure? Can you
Yeah.
do that? Is that legal?
Yeah. Well, you also say everything is possible. So
Everything is possible, and I have the bracelet right here on my wrist to prove it. You know that I really do believe that everything is possible if you can, if you can feel it, you can create it.
I love that. Is there anything that you think I didn't cover in my questions that you want to leave us with?
Oh my gosh, we would, Kayla, like you said, you and I could talk for hours. We'll carry those over to another time.
That sounds good. Well, thank you for letting me pick your brain and ask some of the questions that I know others are thinking in a way that I think I uniquely get to do because I know the you behind what you do, and I am very honored to get to be a part of your daily life and get to be the one that calls you while you're exercising and just talk business or life. So thank you for all that you do to be the light. And again, thank you for letting me ask these questions today.
Well, and Kayla, you know how much I love you, and thank you for, being there always. You always have my back, and for having the same vision because, I can't do this alone. I need a really solid team, and you've been such a core person in building out that team. So it's a mutual admiration, my friend.
Yeah. Yes. I'm going to say I'm very thankful I get to do that. We could just go on and on. Okay. Well, I am going to go celebrate my little boy's birthday today. And I believe you have some others to speak to today. And thank you again for having me.
Thank you, Kayla, and have a great celebration.
Thank you.
All right, bye-bye.